Yesterday I got the black DX out for the first shakedown test. On the shakedown I did run into a little bit of an issue. I was driving it not so aggressively, but I did try to hit VTEC once, and as soon as I tried to hit VTEC, there was a little bit of an issue there that it didn't engage. And as I pushed through the RPMs, it hit 8,000, then I heard VTEC engage. So then I immediately let up off the ignition, and I thought, okay, maybe there's an oil pressure issue or something not causing it to engage, like electronically. But there were no engine lights. So what I did was I brought it back home and I looked under the hood, and no issues from up top. There was no oil leaking on the ground, but when I saw the undercarriage, I jacked it up. There was oil across the shifter linkage, so I decided to pull the car apart a little bit. So upon inspection, I thought it was a rear main seal, or I thought it was a distributor or VTEC solenoid. I wasn't really sure where the oil was coming from because the oil was at the lowest part of the engine and then dripping on the shifter mechanism. I didn't really smell it or see it anywhere. Usually you can smell it when it touches the exhaust, but the oil didn't touch the exhaust. It was just dripping off the shifter or transmission. So I decided to pull out the inspection cover, and I inspected the flywheel. I don't see any oil on it currently. I ended up checking the dipstick. It was about a liter down. I filled in some oil. After that, I decided to remove the oil pan to see if that was the cause of the leak. And when I pulled the rubber gasket off, it seemed to have a wet spot through the gasket where the rest was dry. So I feel that if I replace it, my oil leak will be gone. I can't guarantee that that was the source of the problem, but let's go ahead and get that replaced first. My order from Racing History Company has come in. We got some genuine engine oil from them. We got a spoon oil filter, so I'm gonna try the spoon oil filter. It has a magnet inside. Let's give this an open. Looks pretty cool, Spoon Sports, but they advertise it saying that it has a magnet inside it, which is pretty cool. We'll see how that goes. Okay, one thing I wanted to switch up on this car, because I put this on my EK. It's a very cool service that Racing History offers. They offer a service where you don't have to go to the parts store and give them a part number. Sometimes you'll see part stores, they get frustrated when you give them too many part numbers and things. So you can just go on this site and get your restoration nuts and bolts without even knowing the part number. They label it all. So if you wanted Honda Bond, they have it on the site, and they offer it for Canadian retail, which is a great service for all of us. You don't need to go into the dealership, have to deal with them and pay retail, when you can just get everything off the site and order it. And they also have aftermarket things, which is awesome. So curated parts. So they offer spoon filters, Mugen filters, etc. And they also have a Felpro, because we all know how hard it is to seal with the stock rubber. This pretty much is a foolproof method for all of us when we might accidentally over torque or something. I installed this in my EK9 last fall, and dude, it no leaks instantly, and it lasted the entire trip. I was so surprised. I usually didn't believe that I'd ever stick a Felpro in my car, but that's what I actually recommend Felpro for your oil pan on a B series for sure. This is the way. And you can see it's steel reinforced, which is what happens is if you tighten one, or they do have a sequence in the manual, but if you tighten one too much, the rubber gasket pulls out slightly. And when it pulls out a little bit, that's where it leaks. It'll come through the bolt hole or whatever, and it will leak out if you don't do it correctly. So it's important, and this just makes it easier for us. So like, if you're used to installing the rubber gasket and you do the job right, for us simpletons that work at home that don't do the oil pan every day, you just put this to the torque spec and you're pretty much just good to go. And what's cool is Felpro even gives you these guide pins. I don't even think I need the Honda one because they provide me with RTV. So a B series oil pan requires RTV, where the oil pump is bolted to the block. Because it has a slit there, or it's not a solid surface, it needs RTV there on the one side, so it seals the crack there. Okay, so we have to clean this silicone RTV off both sides with some brake cleaner and a scrubbing pad. There's not too much there, it looks fairly easy to clean. We'll give it a little bit of a spray. Okay, so the failure point is definitely looking around this area here. So what I was saying was the oil crept through here somewhere. And that's where it was leaking on the lowest side. So this, when I pulled this off, it pulled off all the silicone. There's none. So usually you would clean it off or you'd scrape it off with a razor. But it actually pulled off with the gasket, all of it. So you can see there's quite a bit on this side, and then there's like none here on the rubber gasket. So like, I never resealed the motor, this particular, on the DX. I never resealed it, so I didn't change the oil pan because it wasn't leaking. So I guess the year it sat actually did it to it, so it probably just dried slightly and just peeled off. But that's okay. We'll get that replaced up right away. And the point of failure of the oil pan was right here. So if we take a closer look, I hope I can focus in enough for you guys, but if we take a closer look at this gasket, you'll notice a reflection of how close. So this line is the way it's stretched on the block. So that line would be straight when it's on the block. So meaning was it like something like this? It was pinched out like that. And also you can see the line of the washer. So this may have caused it to push out like that. So it's stretching in a way it shouldn't have. And you can see the marks. If you can, there's an impression of this, which may or may not have caused an issue. But if you look here, I think I'm just discovering along with you guys, that this hole stretched out right on the edge. So this was guaranteed, or was the source of the leak right there. And that with someone leaving on these two. Let's clean it back up. It sucks that the bottom got sprayed with oil, and I'm gonna have to go through and clean all the suspension and underside a little bit. Slowly, manually, just with a blue rag. Just get all the oil sweat off. I think it's been sweating for a little while until it finally gave way. So all my brand new restored parts got soaked or covered in oil and dirt now. So, and B-series oil pans can be a bit tricky to get to seat right or to seal. So the B-series oil pan can be distorted if you over torque it, but Honda had provisions, they thickened it up by adding steel plates. So it's usually not the case when it bends, but it's a good idea to check it just in case, because you don't know what the stuff's been through if it's not your own car. So here you can see at one point someone ground it down to clean it up. So they removed some silicone. Or not. Or it could be just previous silicone. Let's take a look. Yeah, it is previous silicone. So it wasn't cleaned up thoroughly enough, I don't think. Because this silicone is different than that color. And they applied it in these areas where some Honda techs, and I don't mean the forum, they suggest adding silicone because these oil pans leak profusely. But if you do the job right, they won't leak. But the tricky part is doing the job right, because it does require you to be quite thorough when installing it and doing the right sequence, so the rubber gasket doesn't squish out. And that's why I brought up the FSM for you guys, is it needs to be tightened in a sequence, not in a sequence, but in an order. So hand tighten first, essentially, and then one round of tightening. So meaning before you hit 8.7, you should be essentially tightening it all at 5 and then 6 pounds or whatever, however you want to do it. But they just want you to slowly get to the 8.7, so someone doesn't just go 8.7 and then the one corner gets too tight and then it blows out on the corner. And you can't really tell it blows out unless it leaks out from there, right? So I just do the Felpro because it's easier and there's no chance of it screwing up. But even with the Felpro, I'm still gonna do the job thoroughly, as I would a normal oil pan on these cars. And I realize everyone needs to get their car on the road as quick as possible, but this job, you should take your time on and just act like a perfectionist, like when you're doing this particular job. So when I go to reapply this, I've already cleaned the mating surface. I've put my eyeballs right up to the block to make sure that there's nothing contaminating the surface. I've gone through and scuffed it all, so there's no silicone or contaminants on the block like here or here, which would cause a leak or something. So I'll go through and act like a perfectionist and make sure that everything's sanitary. and clean it up the best I can. You see how that piece of silicone fell off without even doing anything? It's because it needs to mechanically bond to it. And if the surface is not scuffed up, essentially like a paint job, it has nothing to bind to. I use a gray pad to scuff it all up, or you can use whatever pad, but just make sure you, there's my gray pad right here, that you use it to scuff it up so it bites. But we're also not going to be putting silicone on this side. This side there should be no silicone. So on the block side there's going to be silicone. There shouldn't be silicone on this side. You're just adding more issues. Like let's say if it doesn't adhere to the rubber on the one side because you didn't clean it properly. So this side should not have any silicone, only apply it to the block side. Take your time. And when the plastic razor blade doesn't work, I just give it a hard scrub to see if it'll break it a little bit. And if it doesn't break with these two methods, I use a little chemical brake cleaner, and this will break it down a little bit, and then you can get it off. But you see the point I'm getting at here. We're gonna end up with a very sanitary surface. When we're finished, we're gonna clean out the oil pan with the brake cleaner, every crevice and surface, the baffle, to make sure there's no crap in it. But also, like I was saying, I did the block already, but I'm gonna do it again, but right before I apply this. And the silicone job needs to be done as soon as you're about to put it on, because what's gonna be happening is I let the car sit for 24 hours. I let most of the oil drain down the inner block, and then I spray it clean, and in the hour or whatever it's taken, I've been talking to you guys, setting up the camera, what have you, preparing for the next shot. It's taken some time. So by the time this oil pan is ready to go on, there's going to be oil dripping down the block, and it's going to be contaminating the surface. So I need to go through and clean it again. And right before that, I'm going to make sure it's all dried up. It'll give me a few minutes. Apply the silicone. Put the oil pan up. Hold it. Install it by hand. Okay, so now we're going to tighten. I've just put on the oil pan. Now we're going to tighten the bolts. Finger tighten at 6 points as shown below. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tighten all bolts and nuts starting from bolt 1 clockwise. Okay, here we have the inspection cover, which I didn't show to you guys earlier, but here we have the inspection cover on a B18, or on the Type R motors, it's a reinforcement as well. So this inspection cover, this is where it was leaking from, the bottom. The bottom was wet. But the reason I pulled this off first is to get an understanding if it was the rear main seal. So we look on the inside of it to see if it was wet. Okay, we are almost ready. Okay, let's give this a quick start. I'm hoping I did a thorough job. Skip this outside and we'll go for a quick test drive. Okay, so we're under the car. I pulled off the inspection cover. It's very dry underneath both sides. I haven't cleaned that up. The washer needs replacing. I should have done that. But that's not the source of the leak. Yeah, the source of the leak is actually seems like it's coming from above there, so I can't give you any information yet, or I don't know where it's coming from yet, but this is soaked, it's dripping, and these pockets have oil in them. So I'm trying to track it down to the top of the motor, but there's no signs of oil leaking up there either. So I'm gonna have to dig a little bit deeper. So the next steps going forward, we just eliminated one problem. So the P series oil pan, it's not leaking, and it looks to be behind the bell housing. So we're gonna take the starter off next, try to get another peek in there, and most likely pull the transmission. But we're not gonna be doing that on today's episode. The video is gonna get a little bit too long. So I'm gonna end that there as just doing the oil pan, and then I'm gonna continue to diagnose on the next video, and we'll go from there. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.